Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We'll give it another 2 minutes before we start. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I am Salma Shtali, the Program Manager for e-Stewards. Thank you for joining us today for the NAID webinar for e-Stewards. I have the pleasure to introduce Bob Johnson to you. He's the founder of NAID and will speak to you today about how to get started with your NAID AAA certification and the benefits for e-Stewards. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Bob.
Well, thank you, Salome. Am I broadcasting okay?
Yes.
All right, good. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, depending on what side of the country or the world you're on at this point. I really appreciate you being here. I've been looking forward to this for several months. Of course, we were at iSigma and NAID. We were very proud that e-Steward would acknowledge our data security certification program and move forward. We know you have a lot of questions, and this is part of answering them. If you do have questions along the way, I think in the console that you have available, I might be looking at a different one here, but you have the ability to ask questions or in some way or another submit them. I'll take a break occasionally. Maybe Salome can ask me if she sees them, or we'll save some for the end. I'll also, those of you who know me, and I do know a lot of you, and it's been good to get to know you over the years, but I'm relatively accessible as well. So if you have any questions, afterward, and you just want to chat or have a problem, whatever, feel free to pick up the phone and get a hold of me. Without further ado, let me make sure this thing is all working. All right, so on tap here today is we're going to talk about oversight and administration, just kind of behind the scenes. A couple slides is all we're going to spend on that. Because of iSigma or e-Stewards adoption of NAID certification, there were some kind of benefits, program benefits that were built in that are near to you guys, and I want you to know what those are, so we'll talk about those. Get in a little bit to the types of certification that NAID offers. I know sometimes it might even seem a little complicated. You'll see that it isn't, but sometimes the complication comes from people not knowing how to refer to it. Then, again, I know there are a lot of questions about how to apply or prepare and apply for certification, and maybe even more questions about what it means to your bottom line. You'll probably hear me say this again, but one of the nice things about iSigma and NAID and Prism that came together to form it is that the board of directors is made up of guys like you guys as small business owners, and they understand that there's got to be it's got to have a benefit at the end of it, where you don't do these things just for your health. There needs to be an economic payoff for it. And if I have some time at the end, we're going to talk about what's coming in the future. So some of you might know this already, but 2 years ago, almost to the day, NAID and Prism International came together to form one organization. NAID was, or is, because it still exists in name, the 30-year trade organization for the secure information disposition industry, if you will. Obviously, it started with hard copy information destruction, paper shredders, and grew there. But even as early as 20 years ago, our electronics recyclers, companies that were taking back electronics and had to destroy the information on them, were supporting the organization for the same reason that the other guys did, is that the legitimate operators were being hurt by misinformation in the marketplace. Operators who were lying to the clients who didn't know how to tell it was a lie. And so the premise of NAID was always and remains to educate the environment, the marketplace, so that, because good operators thrive in a market where customers have the right information and know what they need to know to make a good decision. Prism International was the 40-year organization aimed at data storage, records. A lot of them were record centers, others were data backup. But anyway, because of the very similar organization, we had cooperated with them on many initiatives over the years, and we eventually 2 years ago merged to form the International Secure Information Governance and Management Association, which was our way of arriving at iSigma. If I had gotten the right logo, it would be a registration mark, not a trademark after the iSigma, because it is a federally registered trademark at this point. Now, it is not wrong to think of NAID and Prism still existing, because they do exist as divisions of iSigma, and so they are still there. Both have their respective certification programs. So NAID still has NAID AAA certification, and Prism Privacy Plus Prism has Privacy Plus certification for the data storage. Because of modifications we've made, you can now get both of them using the same auditors on the same audit if you happen to be in the data storage business. Most of you that doesn't apply to, so, but it's one of the synergies we gain from coming together. Anyway, so just from a practical standpoint, some of you already know this, but there are tens of thousands of private contracts out there requiring NAID certification, increasingly on the electronics side. I have a story to tell you about that toward the end of the presentation. But but because of that, of course, we didn't, it already had a lot of cachet in the marketplace and was already embedded in a lot of contracts, and of course, we didn't want to reinvent that. So when we protected that when the merger came about, but it also created a larger, stronger organization. So at this point, we represent about over 1,400 members, representing over 2,000 locations globally. Now, with both NAID and Prism, certification is a voluntary program. So those 2,000 member locations I mentioned, about 1,100 of them currently are NAID certified. But it does bring us back to the point that iSigma, as a 501c6 trade association, is a membership organization, and to access its programs, you need to belong. So I know some of you already know this, some of you have already joined, but you do have to join iSigma in order to then move forward with the certification program that we offer, because it's a program of it. I would tell you, whether you were going to get NAID certified or Prism Privacy Plus certified, that belonging to iSigma is a good thing. I mean, we have done so much even in the last month with the shutdown. Initially, within a day or two, we had essential work documents to our members so they could still work in the environment, establishing the premise from which they were essential workers. There was a lot of things we do and continue to do. I think we've had 1 or 2 webinars per week for the last 2 months on different things our members had to know. And those are free webinars that we've given. I would encourage you to go to the resource page on the iSigma website, the COVID-19 resource page, and you can see some of the things we've done in that regard. But we also do regulatory advocacy. We do other things that trade organizations do, which is why they exist. All right, so enough of how the sausage is made, maybe. We'll get back into that. Oversight and administration. I know this will look a little bit onerous, and I don't mean to, but these are all bodies within iSigma that have some say and some involvement in the monitoring, creation, oversight of the certification program. There's the Certification Rules Committee, which recommend and vet specifications. Specifications are made as needed, so regulations change, we make changes. We understand that other certifications maybe can't be so responsive, but our intended mission, or our promise, if you will, to your customers is that in selecting a NAID AAA certified company, that company has been vetted against is meeting all of the regulatory changes. So if a regulation changes, we need to then modify our certification program to adopt the things that are necessary for that. We can't wait 2 or 3 years to do an update. The good news is we integrate them in a really smooth fashion where we provide all the tools, all the policy language, everything we need to provide for that. So it's really not been a problem for anyone. The Certification Review Board is, again, a committee of peers. These are all committees appointed by the board of peers that deal with integrity issues, non-compliance, other things that come to them. I'll talk a little bit about exceptions that you can ask from the specifications. If you have an exception you request, they consider it. Creating a specification that fits everybody is impossible. So we have to have the ability to respond to exceptions. The Multi-Location Certification Council, the third bullet there, is important for you guys for a reason. Now, as the name suggests, it is a certification council of organizations that have many locations in the program. And our commitment to the likes of Iron Mountain and Access and Shred It and those other global organizations that have achieved NAID certification is that we won't change the specifications without their approval, really. I guess sounds like a fine point. The specifications are what they are. Now, when we change the program, which requires the rules committee to change it, the multi-location certification council, we could make a change to a certification standard that for a small organization wouldn't be much of a problem, wouldn't be very expensive, let's say. On the other hand, that same change to a global organization could cost millions of dollars and maybe be impossible. The point of all of this, rather than getting into the details too much, is that e-Stewards now participates as an organization. So they automatically have a seat on the Multi-Location Certification Council. And even though many of you will only have 1 or 2 operations that might be certified, you still get the benefit of participating in the Multi-Location Certification Council kind of veto power, if you will. So our commitment to you guys is that we're not going to make any wholesale changes to this without larger organizations being able to look at it and make sure that it's not going to cause undue problems for them. So it's just a little extra level of control that you will have over specification changes that an average single location operator in the program would not have. Certification support committee is just a committee that does nothing but identify ways that we can make the process of getting certified easier. So what are the obstacles keeping people from getting certified, keeping organizations from getting certified? They address those, confront those, develop support materials, develop mentors, develop whatever they need to do that. The Complaint Resolution Council is then the ethics enforcement. So technically, a violation of certification that is not remedied is a violation of our code of ethics, and there's a very robust ethics enforcement process within the organization. I won't go into that, we don't have enough time. And then ultimately, and finally, the I-Sigma Board of Directors has final sign-off on any changes, because when you're a nonprofit trade organization, the board has ultimate authority. Internally, just worth it to say we have two people, Karen and Shana, are the administrators in the program. You'll have their emails, you know who they are. Michelle Goodman is our Chief Operating Officer, and Karen and Shana answer to her. Michelle then answers to me. I'm also in charge of auditor relations, and currently we have 18 auditors globally. One of the differences, another difference, if you will, in NAID AAA certification is that we have our own contracted, trained, accredited auditors doing the audits. So they only see, and they see repeatedly, operations like these. So they know their way around our world very well. And some of them have been doing audits for upwards of 20 years. Benefits to you guys as being part of e-Steward and participating in the NAID certification program. These benefits originate in what we call the Network Participant Program. We couldn't, as a nonprofit trade organization, create a special thing for any individual organization. So we had to build this thing that would apply. And today, e-Stewards are the only ones participating in the Network Participant Program. Other organizations could possibly, if they wanted to. We don't envision that. We're not campaigning for it, but it's just the way we have to do it. Anyway, we waive the initiation fee on joining I-Sigma. So traditionally, or standard practice, if you're joining the organization, you not only pay the dues, which are prorated for the year. They're billed on a calendar base, on a calendar year basis. And if you join later in the year, they're prorated for the portion of the year that's remaining. But there's also an initiation fee on top of that. So that initiation fee is waived if you're a member of e-Steward. You automatically also qualify for the consulting. We call it a discount. It's actually better termed a subsidy. For an initial certification, we pay a $400 subsidy if you go out and hire one of the approved consultants. You would probably recognize the names of the consulting companies out there or individuals who are approved, because you may be familiar with them. Most of them are. And we grant a $400 subsidy on your initial certification for consulting with them. That's usually given after the fact, when because if you don't use the consultant, you don't get it. In this case, we give it automatically. So on your initial certification, you also get a $400 discount that you are, of course, free to use if you want to hire a consultant, but you don't have to. We're just granting that subsidy in good faith in the beginning to make it more palatable as a benefit of being part of the program. I already mentioned the member of the multi-location program, so that added benefit of one level higher of control over the spec changes. And then e-Stewards are filterable in the service provider directory. And I'm not sure they've got that up and running yet. They may well. If not, it'll be within a matter of a couple of weeks. I know we're making some changes there. And I'm going to go into the website and show you that before we're done here. Now, this is kind of overarching, but I think it does show the level of commitment that we have toward e-Stewards and helping make it a success. So for all of the revenue generated by the e-Steward program internally for iSigma, 6% of that comes back annually for e-Steward to promote NAID certification to potential customers, that to promote the fact that e-Steward has adopted the NAID certification program. So, you know, obviously we, you know, doing that, how that's done is a matter for e-Steward for BAN to figure out and do, but that's there, and that chunk of change helps them then with whatever they want to add to it, promote their involvement in the program. Okay. There are no questions. I'll just proceed with the types of certification. So the initial type of certification that we developed was for physical media destruction. And it really is, and it's what, by the way, listeners, any of you would choose if you were only physically destroying the media. So I can't say whether there are some of you out there that are only doing physical media destruction, or whether it's hard copy, which includes paper, micromedia, other things like that that you're physically destroying, electronic media, hard drives, solid states, handhelds, or even products. You would get the NAID AAA certification for media, for physical media destruction. On the other hand, for organizations who are providing electronic media erasure services, there's a NAID certification for electronic media erasure. Again, applies to hard drives that are overwritten, where secure erase is deployed or degaussed, solid states and handhelds where either overwriting or secure erasure is employed, or magnetic tape degaussing. Those apply to that segment of this. So I'm guessing from my knowledge of the e-Steward participants, most of them are going to fall into that certification. Now, there's no magic to why they're different. If electronic media is erased, it looks like it looked before when it was taken when the service provider took custody of it. So since it looks the same before and after, obviously there's a lot of other things that need to go into the certification of that operation. Some of you who probably have already aware of the fact that we come in with our own devices when we do an audit. We remove devices from your inventory when we leave the audit, as well as our own control devices. We then send them off for forensic analysis as part of what we do. So that's baked into our system. The lab we use is, as far as we're concerned, the best we've found, and we're very happy with them, but it's blind. They have no idea whose drives they're looking at or whose stuff they're looking at when they do it, and they do that forensic analysis. There are a lot of other controls we don't have time to go into here. I'll show you where you can see those that we have, but that's a materially different certification. And because of the forensic testing and other things, it's a more expensive certification as well. I do want to emphasize again, for any of you who are only physically destroying the media, you could choose the first one and still be as NAID certified as anyone else is. It just qualifies the type of destruction you're doing. Certification is renewed annually, and all audits are included in the fee that is paid. So there's no extra, you get the point. There's no extra audit fee, there's no extra auditor to contact. We have the auditors, we send them out, we get the application, we get the auditor, we send them out there. Certification applies to a single operation. So, and this applies if you have, you know, however many operations you have. If you were participating if you have multiple organizations, we can talk about, we do have a way of working around that. We can chat with you on an exception basis on how that would work. But in general, you really need to think of certification applying to single operation. Even in the multi-location program, for a large organization where we might be doing 1/3 of the locations every year, all of those locations are subject to our unannounced audits. So we do a scheduled audit in alternate years. We do unannounced audits, can happen anytime. And I've gotten the phone call from the board member who had 3 unannounced audits in 2 weeks. And they they often are angry, but that's just the way the program is set up. So again, our commitment to the customer is there's no time that anyone knows they're not going to get an unannounced audit. Unannounced audits include access testing and field surveillance. So unlike a scheduled audit where the auditor shows up at the appointed time, is going to review records, is going to be looking at a lot of different things, and they expect you to be prepared for that. An unannounced audit, they will be driving around to the back of the building first and looking in the dumpster. And then they'll be testing the knobs on the door to make sure they're closed. They may have been parked across the street for an hour already, watching the back door to see what happens in the back of the building. They may follow a truck into the field to make sure that all of those things happen, all of those things are in their training, and we encourage them. The reports come back to us. Credible complaints or a record of non-compliance can initiate or increase the frequency of unannounced audits. So if we have an unannounced audit and we're very troubled by something we have, I won't get into it right here, but there's literally a point system. There are very minor things that we find, and they can be remedied very quickly. There are sometimes, we've had really bad, non-compliance issues that we find, and they get a higher rating. Well, there's this whole 1, 2, 3 rating thing, just like your driver's license, and we build that up. If it gets to a certain point, if it gets to a certain point, you're out of the program, and that happens every year. We don't make a big deal out of it, but probably 15 to 20 organizations lose their certification every year, simply because they did not either the thing was so egregious that we couldn't forgive it, or their track record of non-compliance was so high. But when you're talking about 1,100 locations that are certified, 20 is not a big number, and that's probably as many as has ever been in 1 year. But the point is of this that if in fact we are troubled by the number of points in a system, that actually affects and can even lead to a directed unannounced audit, where we got a credible complaint from a customer, maybe even, or from a competitor perhaps, but it's a credible complaint. We don't want to spend money if we don't have to. But if it's a credible complaint, we will issue it on an audit to verify that. I want to stress, while I'm sounding so onerous here, that most non-compliance findings are remediable, and we work with the applicant to remedy those problems, and they don't interrupt their certification in any way. All right. So, being there's no questions at this point, let's talk about preparing and applying. All right, so the first thing you want to do is identify the applicable specifications. I talked about the 2 types of certification, AAA certification there are. You can decide which one of those you have and find the specifications. I'm going to cut away and show you the website where you can find all this stuff, I think in the next slide. Of course, you do your gap analysis then. I would be surprised, knowing the quality of e-Steward operators, that much of what we require in the certification program is already being done. So I'm guessing there's not a big gap in what you've got to do already. And I might be oversimplifying this, but once you've addressed those areas of the specifications that you've identified that you needed to bring up to our specifications, you're ready to submit your application. So the application comes in. And of course, we have it from there, right? I mentioned earlier, and I want to mention it right now again, because this is the point at which it would come up. I may have even probably, maybe exceptions could be 3 and 4 would be submit application. Probably should be. Let me explain why. Because when you're, especially on the electronics side, I don't know that any two companies look exactly like themselves, the other. I mean, there is so much variation in the way organizations work. Maybe I'm overstating that a little bit. Obviously, there's a lot of commonality, but there are a lot of exceptions. There are a lot of things you might do a little bit differently. And just because, you know, we want it one way, or the spec is written one way for the masses, if you will, that's our starting place. And if you guys are reading a spec and you go, I'm going to throw one out here. Why do we need a monitored alarm system on the building when we have a 24/7 security guard doing rounds in the building? You submit that as an exception. So that's just one typical thing. There could be, or not typical at all. That's one thing that has come up in the past. There are other things, obviously, but what I want to say is when you're looking at those exceptions, those specifications, if you're already doing something that comes very near it or that is very like it, then and maybe even be better, you don't necessarily have to do what we said when you've already got a solution that addresses that same problem, and we can help you deal with it. Or it may well be that the animal that you are is not the animal that we wrote it for, and so you need to work with us to come up with a way to address something that is not dealt with in the plan. So just because it doesn't fit doesn't mean we can't figure it out and move forward with it. So that's what that's all about. Now here's where I'm going to hopefully not lose anyone, because I'm going to cut away to our website. This is the NAID website. You can get to it several ways. Either go to the NAID site. Even if you're on our homepage, you're going to see something like this. In fact, why don't I just go there to, here we go. That's you guys. All right. So this is the NAID AAA certification apply page. Now, I got there from going to certification, apply and renew. There's other things, of course, customers might want to look at, or you might want to send customers to look at. Why use a NAID certified company, or why become certified? FAQs, please, if you might look those over. You could also send the question to me. I'm happy to respond. Let's go to apply and renew. I think that's the page I'm on already. So we recently changed things. And if you've been looking at an application for more than a year, you probably have to revisit it. So, and what we've done is we streamlined the number of applications, the applications themselves, and the way we represent the specifications. So all iSigma certifications, including for NAID AAA certification and for Prism Privacy Plus, believe me, this is less complicated, though it might not seem, are in this document here. iSigma certification specifications reference manual. The backbone of the NAID AAA program, whether it's physical destruction or media erasure, electronic media erasure, the backbone is very much the same. Obviously, there are some differences, but the backbone, the employee screening, the access control, the written policies and procedures, regulatory compliance, employee training, all of that stuff is very much the same. And so you know, and it's not only the same on the NAID side, it's the same on the Prism Privacy Plus side too. So maybe I can shrink this. Boy. All right, well, bear with me. I'm just on page 3 here, looking in here. Now, specification applicability. I don't want you to put too much stock in this, not that it's not correct and not that it might be useful for you, but what you need to know is also in the individual application you're going to pick. This is just something that if you're looking in the specifications manual and you wanted to see what specifications align with them without looking at the application, you could look in this area and you could see what those were. Now, because Prism Privacy Plus is relatively limited in its scope and what it does, these are record storage and information management facilities, They simply have to meet all of Section 1, all of Section 2, and all of Section 3. If, however, you're going to be NAID certified, you would look at these things down here. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on them again because they're in the application, but this shows you what specs in the manual align with what it is that you're looking for. And you can go through them and see. So, Section 1, specifications applicable to all NAID, AAA, and Prism Privacy Plus certifications. So you know right now that everything in Section 1, we're going to need something from you on. And it gives you all the details of what it is. Now, by putting them in this manual, we've concentrated them in one place. So you can just go there and read. You can see what the auditor is going to be looking for. The auditor will use this as well. If we have a change to a specification, we don't have to update 10 or 12 applications, which is how many we used to have. Now we just update the manual, and you use it as a cross-reference, and they're all here. So I won't belabor this other than to maybe let's go to Section 2 to show the difference. I already got to Section 3. There we go. Section 2, specifications applicable to facility-based NAID, AAA, or Prism Privacy Plus certification operations. So if you're on-site or mobile, you wouldn't have to worry about this section. But if you have a facility, which I'm assuming most of you do, then this section also applies. Again, you know, you will figure that out. I think it's best probably at this point to show you how, now that I've gotten you maybe a little bit afraid of it, let's assume that you're going to go for this application for certification of electronic media erasure.
Bob, can I interrupt you for a second? We have two questions that came in.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So the first one is, if you provide both media destruction as well as erasure, is that two different programs? For example, if a hard drive cannot be erased and then must be shredded.
It's a great point, and I'm glad someone asked that question. So in the electronic media erasure program, you actually have to get the endorsement for the physical destruction of the media that you, so to answer the question, maybe back up a bit, physical media destruction is included in the electronic erasure for that very reason. We know that if you are providing electronic media erasure, some of the media won't conform to either be reuse, or you won't be able to wipe it, or whatever it might be, and you're going to have to destroy it. So you've got to have that internal capability to get the erasure certificate. So in doing so, you actually also earn the physical media destruction endorsement. So I guess the part of it is that the physical media stuff is baked into that, and I'm going to show it right here on the application. Does that answer the question, Salome?
I think so. And then the second question is, if you provide both on-site as well as certified facility services, how is on-site covered by NAID certification?
It is every certification. So if you obtain NAID AAA certification for electronic media erasure, it shows that you are it actually describes what platforms you have. So it will say you're endorsed for, and when I say that, it's the pedigree that we produce for the certification you have. So I mean, you know, at a basic level, you can put, you know, we're NAID certified for media erasure. That's the certification. The endorsement is for mobile, for plant-based, for on-site, for physical hard drive destruction. So those are endorsements that come. So if there's the certification at the top level, and then the endorsements qualify what it is that you're certified for under that certification. I can show you an example on the screen here. Let me.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Is there another question before I go on to that?
Not currently.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go to Find Destruction Services. This will answer my question. NAID certified. I went to certified. You can see there's some other qualifiers on here. I can see right away they have not added the e-Steward button. So there will be on here an e-Steward button as well where they can click it, and it would only show those results over here as well. But I just want to show a company, for instance, right now. Let's go down and pick electronic. Plant-based. Overriding. Plant view. So these are locations that are currently certified for overriding. And you can see the pedigree here, which shows that they are NAID AAA certified for plant-based, computer hard drive destruction physical, computer hard drive destruction overriding, mobile, paper records destruction. And so this shows their, I'll talk about the monitoring location certification status. That gives the customer a way to actually get notices on renewals and lapses in here. So that's what shows up though. So there's the company that achieves it that achieves certification gets qualifiers to show what they have. So I think I'm going to have to go back to certification, apply renewal. There. I was going to show you the application, and this will actually explain that point a little bit more as well. Oh, I think over here. Okay. So we get this is all information we ask for when you start, but it comes down here, and then these would say requires specifications. You already know that you need all of one, right? So anything in one you're going to need to be doing, and it's all there. Now, we don't. You'll remember in the manual, it had all of it spelled out what it is we want you to do. It also showed you what the auditor was going to be looking for when they come and visit, the auditor methodology. So that was in the manual. Here we just reference the specifications. Now it does get a little bit, there are some information that we want. So when it comes to ongoing access individual screening, an access individual is an individual who has access to the information. That's a defined term. So how are you going to screen them? There's initial screening and ongoing screening, and we describe you have options there. So you need to tell us what option you used. So you would fill in that, but most of it is not that. Most of it is just telling you there are some places where we require you to enter information, but most of it is just referencing the spec that you need. Here's a spec that we're going out for comment on that we expect to introduce, which is data subject response policy. We're now entered a world where, believe it or not, your customers, if that customer is giving you personal information, has a right to come to ask you about your policies and procedures. Now, we don't think that's going to happen very often. The important thing is we need for you to have a policy that addresses what are you going to do if a Bank of America account holder comes to you and says, hey, they tell me you're taking their computers. I want to know how you're processing them. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to get into a whole supplying them with a bunch of information. What I am suggesting is you can't ignore them. And so we need to have that. Now, we don't, of course, we provided policy. We had attorneys, the best attorneys in the world in this area, write up what that policy should be. And it does give you a little wiggle room, essentially saying you got to prove who they are. Then you got to go back to the customer and say, hey, one of your customers is asking us for information. The point is you have to be able to say you can't ignore them or you're in violation. But I'm pointing it out for two reasons. One, because I mentioned before that we have to respond to changes in the regulations in a way. I'm also pointing out the fact that we're not going to put this in until we have vetted it with members and they completely understand why we're doing it and the purpose of it, and because they need to be able to talk intelligently about it as well. And so, as I say, in this application, we've done what that initial table of contents did in the manual, is we've identified all the things that you need to have. Now, we do have to respond to some things. So, as I already alluded, but you get into section 4, additional specifications applicable to NAID AAA certification media destruction. So, because you have a requirement to destroy any physical media you're erasing, you have to decide what's applicable and what's not applicable. So if you're overwriting hard drives, this is going to be applicable. So you need to check that, and you need to provide us the details regarding your hard drive physical destruction media. But if you're not overwriting solid state devices, then this is not applicable. And you would check the not applicable, and we'll ignore it as we go. Now the auditor won't pay attention to it when they go down. And similarly, now we didn't put any other devices in there like microfilm, because if you're erasing electronic media, your microfilm destruction capability is not a big deal. It doesn't overlap with the service that you're providing, so isn't in there. And then we get down to areas like quality control policies and procedures, and magnetic media degaussing. We need a space in there, I see right now. Make a note on that. So you get the gist. So other than that, it pretty much is just telling what you need to do. And then there's the payment information. So we now are in the electronic erasure side of it. So here you would tell us we're doing hard drive overwriting, we're doing solid state overwriting, or we're doing magnetic media degaussing. If you're doing one of them, the fee is $28.30. Now you have to remember that includes all audits that come with the program. So everything involved in the program comes with that. 2 of the 3, why it's more, if you looked at the number, it's simply our additional cost of doing the forensic testing on the devices that we're taking in. So that's why these things go up depending on if you have more. We don't think many of you are going to have transfer processing stations. That would be a place where you're receiving materials and you're not really doing any wiping. But if you do have them, we need to know about them because you're taking custody of materials there. And that's also something that you would need to pay for because we're going to audit it. And with that location, you need to meet all of the other specs except for the destruction-oriented specs because that isn't there. And that's the application. So I'm happy to personally, or Karen or Shana would be happy to get you on the phone and walk through every application with you one-on-one if that's what you need. So we're happy to do that. Are there any questions before I move on that one? Salome? No?
I do not see any currently.
Okay. All right. Well, we're right on track, so I should have time to get through this without burning through going over the hour. So what does it mean to the bottom line, right? We don't. I wish I could point to some very clear empirical evidence. I mean, we've done studies in the past which show that companies that are NAID certified have better profit margins. They do better. They're stronger. They tend to be larger organizations. You could blame that on other things, but we've got some of that out there. But I'm gonna turn that around a little bit because you see on the screen it says, let me fire up the screen here. Look at the thing. Compared to what? It's not unusual, and I'm sure there's people on this call right now that are thinking, well, I've been doing fine without this. Why do I need it? Nobody's ever even asked me about it. I'm doing fine. And so what and of course, over the years, we've gotten that time and time again from companies. And then what happens is that one of their customers requires that they get NAID certified. It's just, the customer came across our website or another vendor went in there and talked to them about NAID certification, and the service provider has to get NAID certified. 6 months later, they call and say it's the best thing that ever happened to them. They had no idea how much more business they were going to get because they were NAID certified. So it's very, very common for that to happen. And, obviously it's important too that when you're out in the marketplace, there's always going to be competition if it's a viable enterprise, if it's a going thing. When you look at, I think on that screen you saw in North America, there might be 50 or 60 ITADs right now, or electronics recyclers with NAID AAA media erasure destruction. I think the number is closer to 75 right now. While the number of service providers offering that is, what, 10 times that, 20 times that, we know we'll never have most of them in there. But the ones that we have, the ones that fall into that smaller category, are the ones that are going to get the margin. They're going to have customers that understand what it is they're paying for and why they're paying for it, and those things. So by limiting the competition you have for that, that helps. This kind of goes back to what I said in number 1 on the near zero attrition. A trade association, as you can imagine, we have companies come and go as members every year. Because you need to be NAID certified to be a member, and because NAID certification becomes so integral to their marketing and their success in the marketplace, we literally have zero, even in a year like this year with all the challenges, we have almost, I mean, the companies get acquired and who knows what can happen to them. But the attrition rate of companies from our organization that are certified is, statistically speaking, 0. And that does speak to the value of certification. Similarly, you can imagine that if 4 or 5 or 6 years ago, a company got NAID certified, or 20 years ago, got NAID certified, and it was proving not to be of any value, that they would not renew. Why am I going to go through this if I'm not getting any value out of it? They always renew. Again, I don't know of any, and I'm sure they exist, but I really don't know of any I-Sigma member or NAID member that got certified and 4 or 5 years later decided we don't need it anymore. They kept doing it because it made sense for them to do it. Now we have to help. It doesn't, in order for this to work, and when we're asked how come NAID certification has been so successful, and certainly we're growing success on the electronic side, and the hard copy side is unmatched, the paper shredding side. It's because companies have been out there talking about it and they know what to say to a customer. The reality is that your customer has a legal obligation to validate you are doing certain things when they hand over personal information to you for your protection. They legally are on the hook for that. There are several articles in my LinkedIn page that make this point more in depth, and I'm not going to belabor it, but you can easily explain to your customer their legal obligation to be doing this. The thing is, your customer doesn't know what they're supposed to be looking for. Even though the regulation puts the onus on the customer to validate those things or be out of compliance, I mean, they literally have to be able to demonstrate that they've done that due diligence. They not only do they often not know they're supposed to do it, they wouldn't know how to do it in the first place. So that's the meaningful role we play. And once you get that all of that 30-second elevator speech down, you're probably going to be forcing some of your competitors to get certified, which happens often. But the point is, a customer can't back down from that. And then we take full responsibility to be part of. If 2 years from now you come back to me and you say, Bob, I've been certified for 3 years and I still don't see any value to my bottom line, the fact that then we've failed you in some way. And these are the things we do. Now, you already saw the directory, which gives customers a way to find companies who are certified. We also provide you on number 1 there. We give you HTML language that you can put in your website on whatever page you decide, webmaster. And that automatically pulls up. You don't put in a logo. You put in the HTML. I don't even know if it's HTML anymore, but you put in the language, the script. And it pulls in the logo into that spot. It pulls in what's called our verifier logo. And if a client clicks on that logo, your pedigree comes up automatically on the screen. So a little certificate pops up that shows what you have and when you were certified and what you're certified for, and all those things are right there, and it's very legit. I showed you the directory, so I'm not going to belabor that any other than to say it's going through a major upgrade right now, and you're going to see it. Probably by September, we are going to launch what's called our compliance reporting service. Now, this will be a service that customers, going back to my statement earlier, that the client has a legal obligation to demonstrate that they're doing both initial and ongoing due diligence on any third-party data processor, which is what you're called under regulation, to whom they're handing over personal information. Now, that's what NAID certification does for them, is it provides the fact that we've looked at all those things. And yes, they can monitor your certification, or yes, you can give them a copy of your certification, or they can check online. But what about if they could go on and subscribe by adding their email and get an automatic report fed to them that shows what you have? Now we're not going to be issuing negative reports. If somebody loses their certification, we're not going to, send that kind of stuff out. This is really just for companies that are certified in good standing. If a client goes on there and they want to request this form, they can get both an initial report showing the audit, all the compliance features, the forensic analysis results, all of those things would be in there. The employee screening credentials, all that stuff is there, and it goes into their file. Now, once a customer gets a taste of being able to get that level of reporting, both initially and on an ongoing basis, understanding that that document makes them compliant with the regulation, how do they ever go back from getting that report? They want that report, and that's something that you're going to have access to, because we're going to build in that functionality into our site. It's not without challenges. We're working through a couple of bugs. As it stands right now, anybody could request your compliance report. So what does that mean? They can still see your NAID certified online. They can see all your credentials online. We're trying to work through whether or not the client needs to be, whether the client needs your approval to get that report. We're leaning against that. We're leaning to make this just an open thing that if you're certified, your report can go to anyone. And there's a whole terms and conditions and everything we won't get into, but we're really excited about that. I have done, and there are on the website some places, and they may not, I better not even say there are at this point. We have a comparison of, say, NAID AAA certification compared to Europe has 3 or 4 standards, including ISO standards that are very common. In Britain, they have the BSIA, NFNOI in Netherlands, and whatever. And we've literally done a comparison of here's the other specs and here's what we require. It is crazy that the fact that you're looking at 20 or 30 different things that we require in our certification, and any of the other ones have 5 or 6 or 7. And you could say that same thing about any of certifications, other competitive certifications that you guys are running into. There's nothing to compare with what we do. So we're working on that. I know we do have one kind of comparison tool already online, but we can provide those either on a pat basis, or even if you need them on a customized basis, you can send me an email and I can send you something that will help you talk to a customer about it. And then that speaks to my personal involvement. Probably some of you know I wrote the book, if you will, on information disposition. It's a 350-page textbook on the entire everything anyone would ever want to know and more about information disposition. But I do have a great acumen in this area. I hope that doesn't sound braggadocious. I don't mean it to, but I know this stuff backward and forward. The regulations, the operations, quality control, all that stuff, and it's in the book. I encourage you to buy the book. It's not very expensive. But the point is that I'm often, probably 2 or 3 times a week, I'll get a call or an email from one of our members that says, I have a customer who is asking me about some bizarre specification or some bizarre law, or what maybe the customer is a little confused. Often it might be a NIST spec that they think they need to meet when they don't need to meet the NIST spec. And I've just got a whole repertoire now of emails I can send back complimenting the customer on why they're on their diligence and want to do the right thing. But here's the reality, and it's not foolproof. Probably 75% of the time, 80% of the time, the customer goes, oh, this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about. We don't have to talk about that anymore. Let's move on. So I can actually run interference for you guys on those issues, and that's what they pay me for. I don't mind it at all. So the point is, on many levels, don't be a stranger. Whether you're in the program, you're starting to get certified, and you're just running into a wall, or you've got a question, or your team member working on it has a question, send me an email. We'll arrange a phone call. We'll get on and talk about it. If you have, if you're certified and you have a customer that doesn't get it, or you know, one example I like to point to, I'll close with this, is I was contacted by the New York City Metropolitan Transportation. I might be getting that wrong or whatever, but they were putting together an RFP for electronics destruction, and for the city. And they came to me and they said, well, we like NAID certification. We like what you have. One of the people competing brought this to us, and it looks very robust. However, we have another guy in the marketplace that's saying that this other certification, you guys can fill in the blank, might be the same thing, and we should include that as well. It wasn't even a 10-minute conversation with that contracting agent before they settled on NAID triple certification only. And so that was a major win for us in the electronic space, obviously, and that's literally a common occurrence if I can get that conversation. So now I hope that doesn't come out so arrogant. I certainly don't mean it. It's just that I know this stuff, and I know that what our program is compared to the other programs. So you know, when you run into those situations, first of all, know that we can win that argument. You can win that argument every time, or 99% of the time, and I'm in your corner trying to help you do it. So, according to my clock, I went exactly 1 hour, and probably the biggest thing that happened to this is I finished talking with 1 hour, Salome. Are there any questions at this point?
Thank you so much. I don't see any questions, but if you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat or the question form. And,
yeah, and
to let you know,
there's a survey afterward, right?
Yes. So, and this webinar was recorded, so we'll make it available on the website if you ever want to watch parts of it again or want to recommend it to other people. And if you stay on this program a little longer, you'll get a questionnaire that you can fill out to let us know how you liked that webinar. I don't see. I see.
I just want to emphasize thank you again. I know it's not fun to listen to somebody rant for an hour, and I appreciate you guys taking the time. I'll tone it down a little bit when we're talking on the phone, so I hope to hear from you. Thanks, Salome.
Perfect. Thank you, Bob.